Welcome to AION Powerhouse, the deep dive. Today, we are not talking about which model to use. We are pulling apart a single number that quietly reprices every AI company being built right now. 52%. That's the average gross margin of an AI product. Software was 80. Today, we argue that the 80% SaaS playbook and the valuation multiple that rode on it is the most expensive assumption a founder can still be making in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, it's this silent assumption that just sits on your cap table, right? Just waiting to absolutely break your next fundraise if you aren't paying attention.
Exactly. And, before we really tear into the mechanics of why that is, let's just lay out the mission for this deep dive and put our sources on the table.
Right, let's do it.
So we're pulling data from the ICONIQ 2026 State of AI report. We're cross-referencing that with Bessemer's latest cloud cohorts, and we're digesting the ongoing thesis from A16C's regarding model pricing.
Which is a lot of data, but it all points to one thing.
It does. Our mission today is to figure out what kind of company you're actually building. Are you an early stage software giant, or are you something entirely different?
Right.
And to answer that, we have to start at the baseline with that 52% number. Because for anyone looking at their P&L right now, we strictly need to define gross margin.
Yeah, let's get the definitions out of the way.
So in one plain line, gross margin is your revenue minus the direct cost of delivering your product. That cost is known as COGS, or cost of goods sold. You express that remainder as a percentage.
And, I mean, that percentage is basically the lifeblood of your valuation.
Which makes the data we are looking at kind of terrifying, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
The ICONIQ 2026 State of AI report, they surveyed about 300 executives, and they found the average AI product gross margin is sitting at 52%.
Wow.
Yeah, and the SaaS benchmark everyone internalized for a decade is 80 plus. That gap, that is not a rounding error. It is a completely different kind of company.
Right, it's structural.
Exactly. And the reason for that gap comes down to one specific line item that classic software as a service basically didn't have, which is inference.
Yeah, and let's clearly define inference here, because it really is the gravity of this entire conversation.
Go for it.
Inference is the computational cost incurred every single time a user hits your product, right? Because you must pay a model provider to run the tokens. So every prompt typed, every response generated, every autonomous agent loop running in the background, it all costs compute.
Right. And the ICONIQ data shows this inference bill runs roughly 20 to 25% of your revenue. Let's call it 23% on average.
Which is huge.
It's massive. For context, if you look at a classic mature SaaS company at scale, their hosting costs fell toward the low single digits. It was a negligible fraction.
Oh, I practically rounded to zero.
Exactly. And inference just does not behave that way.
No, it doesn't. And here's why that one line item matters more to a founder than, any new model release we've seen this year. It connects directly, violently, even to capital market.
How so? Walk us through it.
Well, to understand why, we have to introduce the ARR multiple. That's the valuation multiple investors pay based on your annual recurring revenue.
Right.
For 15 years, software was worth 10 to 20 times its revenue, precisely because an 80 cent on the dollar gross margin meant that every new dollar of revenue you brought in was almost pure future cash flow. You had massive leverage.
Right. The incremental cost was essentially zero.
Exactly. So when you strip the margin from 80 down to 52, the engine justifying that multiple is fundamentally broken.
Wow.
So the question for every founder listening to this deep dive isn't, is my AI good? It is, am I building a software company, or have I built something that just looks like one on the pitch deck?
I want to push back on the panic for a second, though, because there is this very comforting founder myth circulating in the ecosystem right now.
Oh, I know exactly which one you're going to say.
Right. It's the idea that models are getting cheaper at this breakneck pace, so margins will just naturally fix themselves over time.
Yeah.
People constantly point to LLM inflation.
Right, the A16's term.
Exactly. It describes the phenomenon where inference prices for a model of equivalent performance are falling roughly 10 times a year.
And to be fair, it is a real phenomenon. The models are getting cheaper, but relying on that to fix your margin is a lethal false sense of security.
But look at the extreme token price war we're witnessing today.
Yeah.
DeepSeek V4 and Google Gemini Flash have pushed the floor down to roughly 15 to 30 cents per million tokens.
Yeah, it's wild.
And meanwhile, premium frontier models like Claude Sonnet sit around $15 per million output tokens. That's a massive 100x token spread.
It is.
So if you're an operator looking at that plunging floor, you think, fantastic, my input costs are cratering. I just sit back and my margins will naturally recover.
You see that massive spread and you'd naturally think so. But here is the hidden truth of a commoditizing market. You do not get to keep those savings.
Wait, why not? Walk us through the mechanics of that. Why don't I keep the margin if my costs drop?
Because your competitors have access to the exact same falling token prices.
Oh.
Exactly. If you are both building, say, a sales email drafting tool, and the cost of the underlying model drops by 90%, your competitor will simply lower their subscription price to steal your customers.
Ah, so they undercut you.
Yep. To win the deal, you are forced to pass the LLM inflation savings directly into your customer's lap. So the cost falls, but the price you can charge falls right along with it.
So you're just on a treadmill.
You are on a treadmill faster, but you're in the exact same place. And we're seeing this happen at the very top of the food chain, by the way.
Are we talking about Anthropic?
Yes. Anthropic reportedly lowered its own profit margin forecast even as its revenue skyrocketed.
Wow.
I mean, if one of the most sophisticated AI labs in the world is feeling the heat of the treadmill, the application layer is definitely feeling it.
That makes total sense.
So taking a step back to view the second-order effects, the reframe we really need to make here is structural. SaaS hosting was a fixed-ish overhead, right? Once you built the software and paid for your servers, adding the 10,000th user cost you practically nothing.
Right, the cost amortized towards zero as you scaled.
Exactly. That's why margins climb to 80. But inference does not work like that. Inference is a purely variable cost that scales one-to-one with usage.
Because you pay per query.
Yes. If a user queries your product 10 times, you pay 10 times. 1,000 times, you pay 1,000 times. And it gets competed away on price, not retained.
So it's not a software margin at all.
No. That is the cost structure of a physical manufacturer or a utility, not a software company. The 80% SaaS valuation assumes cash flow you will simply never convert. You are not under-optimized SaaS. You are a different animal.
And the market is about to notice, isn't it?
They already are.
Yeah.
Look at Bessemer's AI cohorts. They aren't treating all AI companies as equal anymore. They're aggressively separating them into what they call shooting stars, operating near a 60% margin.
And supernovas, right?
Exactly. The supernovas burning incredibly hot down around a 25% margin. The multiples for those two groups look radically different.
Okay, so how should an operator actually conceptualize this shift in their daily decision-making? Let me pitch you a metaphor to hold in your head.
All right, let's hear it.
Because when I look at these numbers, what I see is that an AI startup is just a software company with a really intense cloud bill. Like it's the same dynamic as 2012 SaaS, just with a bigger AWS invoice to manage early on.
No, I have to stop you right there because that is the exact trap that kills a seed round. And honestly, the difference between a cloud bill and what is actually happening is the entire point of this deep dive.
Really? Okay, break it down for me.
We need to introduce the concept of a bill of materials.
A bill of materials, okay.
A bill of materials is a real physical feeling cost embedded in every single unit you ship. Think of the actual metal and glass in a smartphone.
Right.
A traditional cloud bill is overhead. It shrinks as a share of revenue the bigger your user base gets. Inference is a bill of materials. It's a per token cost competed on the open market. It does not shrink with scale.
Ah, I see.
Every single time your AI generates a response, it is consuming a raw material. That is not a cloud bill. That is a cost of goods.
Okay, that's a huge distinction. So if it's not software with a heavy cloud bill, it's a manufacturer wearing a SaaS hoodie.
Yes.
You literally have a bill of materials attached to every unit of software you sell. You are Tesla, but you're pretending to be Salesforce on your pitch deck.
That is the exact framing. That's the one. And once you internalize that you're a manufacturer in a SaaS hoodie, it reframes every single decision.
Because a manufacturer doesn't price per seat.
Exactly. They price per unit with their cost of goods strictly modeled underneath. They do not get a default software multiple. They earn their multiple by violently and systematically driving their bill of materials down over time, the way a hardware company optimizes a supply chain.
Which brings us to the real fork in the road for every listener today. If you look at your product right now, you have to ask, are you a utility?
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning you have a permanent thin margin, you are selling a commodity at cost plus, which implies you should raise less capital and price strictly on usage.
Right.
Or, on the other hand, are you early AWS, where your bill of materials is treated as an engineering project that you aggressively attack until the margin fundamentally re-rates.
And we know this is a choice, not destiny. I mean, Anthropic took their inference margin from 38% to 70% in a single year.
Wait, 38 to 70 in 1 year. They engineered their way out of the trap. It's a roadmap. So I want to challenge every founder listening with an 18-month test tonight.
Okay, what's the test?
Can you draw a concrete, engineered line to take your gross margin from roughly 50% to roughly 70% in 18 months?
Through what? Like caching and stuff?
Caching, intelligent routing of cheap models for easy calls, fine-tuning, actually owning the workflow so you're not just reselling tokens.
Yeah.
If you can draw that line, you are early AWS and you can raise like it.
And if you can't? If you can't, you're a utility. And you should build, price, and raise like a utility before the market does it to you in a down round.
That 18-month test brings us to the really uncomfortable part of this conversation. If we look at the companies failing that test, we need to understand exactly why.
Yeah, we have to build a rapid, unflinching steelman argument of why many AI startups are structurally unfundable right now.
Let's do it.
There are 6 pillars to this bear case. Pillar 1. Inference is a permanent COGS die. Unlike traditional hosting, it does not amortize to near zero.
Right.
A 50% margin company is going to stay a 50% margin company until real heavy engineering work is done to change it. It doesn't just magically fix itself with scale.
Which leads directly into pillar 2, the price war treadmill we discussed earlier. The mechanics of LLM inflation cut your input costs, but in a commoditized market, competitors force you to pass those savings straight to the customer.
Exactly. Your cost goes down, your price goes down, and your margin stays completely flat. You run to stay still.
Okay, what's pillar 3?
Pillar 3 is where the threat comes from above. The labs are walking down into your floor. The foundational model providers keep shipping features into the application layer. First it was coding, then general knowledge work, now complex finance.
Right, so if you are a thin wrapper, meaning you just pipe an API into a nice user interface without deep workflow integration, you'll get cannibalized by the very vendor you're reselling.
Exactly. Bessemer's 25% margin supernovas are the ultimate warning of what happens when you have no moat against your own supplier.
That's terrifying. And pillar 4 is an active landmine, the outcome pricing margin trap.
Oh, this one is brutal.
It really is. We are watching per-seat pricing collapse. I mean, it dropped from roughly 21% of SaaS models down to 15% in just a year. The entire industry is moving toward usage and outcome pricing.
Yeah, look at HubSpot.
Right. HubSpot is transitioning to charging 50 cents per resolved conversation. Intercom is charging 99 cents for an AI resolution.
But here's the trap in that logic. If your gross margin is 50% and you price per outcome pricing without strict cost of goods discipline means you can actively lose money on every successful outcome.
Break that down. How do I lose money by succeeding?
Okay, imagine you charge a customer 50 cents for resolving a support ticket. But to get that resolution, your product runs a complex, autonomous agentic loop in the background. That agent queries a frontier model 5 times, corrects itself, and finally delivers the answer.
Okay.
If that background compute burns 60 cents of tokens, you just lost 10 cents for doing a great job. Your success becomes the engine scaling your losses. It's a landmine.
Wow. You're literally paying to serve your customer.
Yeah.
And that bleed leads to pillar 5, the valuation reset.
Right. Revenue multiples across the board are compressing toward the reality of the 52% margin. The premium that AI startups commanded over classic SaaS is narrowing.
Because investors are pricing the 52% reality, not the 80% fantasy.
Exactly. The seed bar already reset. Generic AI positioning just no longer buys inflated seed rounds. The market has learned the math.
Which brings us to the final one. Pillar 6.
Pillar 6. Most teams simply will not do the hard infrastructure work. Driving the bill of materials down requires unglamorous, highly technical effort. Evil harnesses, model routing systems, aggressive caching layers.
Let's explain how caching actually works, because it's not just a buzzword. It can trigger up to 90% cost discounts.
90%.
Yeah. How? By ensuring you aren't paying a $15 frontier model to answer, how do I reset my password for the 10,000th time? You store that vector and you serve it for practically zero cost.
Right. And an evil harness does something similar by routing queries. It looks at the user's prompt and decides, does this complex reasoning task actually need Claude Sonnet? Or can we route this simple summarization to the 15-cent Gemini flash?
Exactly. But doing that takes engineering cycles. And typically, founders want to ship flashy new features. The margin roadmap almost always loses to the feature roadmap until the company just runs out of cash.
It's neglect. They stay a utility by neglect.
But a perfect example of someone doing the hard work is Cursor. They were bleeding cash, staring down a negative 30% margin.
Ouch.
Yeah, negative 30. And they escaped that death spiral, not by building more UI features, but by building their own custom model to handle specific tasks. Eventually, they hit a $2 billion ARR valuation. They engineered their COGS.
So that's a playbook.
So the synthesis of this bear case isn't that AI startups are inherently bad businesses. It's that a massive share of them are actually utilities that raised money at software prices.
Yep.
And that valuation gap between what they are and what they are priced at will close painfully if the operator doesn't attack the one number we started with.
But understanding the bear case is only half the battle. Knowledge without application isn't going to save your multiple when you sit down with your board.
True. So let's shift to action. Based on this data, here are 3 concrete operator moves you need to execute this week.
Let's hear them.
Move 1. Treat your inference costs like Cloud Car GS in 2012. You must build an engineered, highly technical margin improvement roadmap.
Right, routing, aggressive caching, small models for the easy 90% of calls.
Exactly. And once you have that roadmap, you make that your fundraising narrative. Do not walk into a VC office and just pitch, we have AI.
No, please don't.
Pitch, we are at a 52% margin today, and here is the engineered 18-month path to 70%. Investors in 2026 are pricing your margin trajectory, not your demo.
They need to see that you fundamentally understand your own bill of materials. Move 2. Price hybrid, but strictly enforce a usage floor.
Okay, explain hybrid pricing.
So you have to skate to where the puck is going, which means moving toward outcome and usage pricing. But you must put a financial floor under your contract to always cover your inference costs. You never want to sign an outcome-based deal that can lose money against your COGS.
So put a floor under it.
Always. And part of that pricing strategy is pricing the workflow lock-in, not the token. The token is the raw commodity being driven to zero. The deeply integrated workflow is the asset that cannot be commoditized. The token is rented, but the workflow is owned.
Which perfectly sets up move 3. Choose depth over breadth, deliberately.
Yeah, the horizontal, thin wrapper that tries to do everything for everyone is the exact utility that gets eaten by the labs.
The vertical product that relies on proprietary data and deep industry workflows, a workflow the labs can't even see, that's the one that earns a real margin and defends a real multiple.
Look at the June 2026 raises that cleared the new higher bar. They skewed heavily to applied and vertical AI for exactly this reason.
If we step back and look at the macro picture of everything we've unpacked today, the takeaway isn't despair. The 52% margin isn't a verdict.
No, it's a starting line. The companies that will win this decade are the ones that treat gross margin as a product they engineer the exact same way the best hardware companies treat their bill of materials. And here is the invalidation. Let's just say it plainly. If your gross margin cannot move meaningfully off 50% inside 18 months, the market is right. You are a utility.
Wow.
And you should build, price, and raise capital like one today on your own terms before a down round does it for you. The founders who internalize that early stop pretending their software and start winning as what they actually are.
And here is a final thought to mull over before your next board meeting. If AI software is actually closer to a manufacturing business, then maybe the next great founders won't look like the product visionaries from the classic SaaS era.
What do you mean?
I mean, they might look a lot more like the ruthless supply chain managers in the Industrial Revolution. Ask yourself, are you trying to be Steve Jobs or are you ready to be Tim Cook? Because optimizing a 50% margin demands a Tim Cook mentality.
That's a great way to put it. So the question isn't whether your AI is good. It's whether you can draw the line from 52 to 70 and whether you're brave enough to price and raise like the company you actually are while you do it. Answer that before your next round, not after.
That's today's AION Powerhouse Deep Dive. If you're rebuilding your pricing or your margin roadmap off this, that's exactly the point. Come back tomorrow for the next one.
That's your ION Founders Briefing. Stay informed every weekday. Subscribe now and download the ION app at aionpowerhouse.com.